This project's been sort of a series of ebb and flows, I would say. It's getting artists interested in the project. It's taken time.
Conceptually, we had figured out that we wanted this set of artists. We wanted to cover these different mediums.
Yeah, there's a lot of education required, but things are picking up pace.
And we wanted everyone to be sort of one foot in the pond of making a physical immersive exhibition that integrated digital art, and another in showcasing a collection of sellable digital art.
When we set out on the project of making a collection, the original idea was that we would have an online gallery and it would all be virtual, and it seemed to be consistent with the concept.
I don't remember at what point we decided that it was the right decision to do a collection. I don't remember if it was like an emphasized, like, poignant moment that we had in a conversation together, but I do remember that it ended up becoming that, and we ended up looking for venue and thinking about what the artwork could be. Still a lot of question marks, We weren't totally sure what all of the pieces were going to be, except for in a very high level concept,
But the more we got into it, and also the more we worked with the artists to see what they were concepting, the idea of a physical exhibition of this work seemed to take on more importance. Then we had a new objective, which was, okay, we've got this collection underway. Let's now have this all culminate in a grand opening of a one-day event. And so that then, became its own monster. And that brought with it a tremendous amount of risk and complexity.
To do something really complex that maybe hasn't ever been done before takes people from totally different backgrounds, totally different corners of expertise, working together in harmony towards a greater goal that they both foresee as the end goal. And, of course, you find really unique epiphanies or hurdles that you creatively problem solve along the way, but you do that together.
So things are feeling like they're getting very real, and that is, bringing in a little bit of, stress to the picture, because we're, progressively having to commit funds to things that I didn't even think that we would ever be doing. Lawyers, PR, branding agency.
Another person that we've brought into the team that is incredibly important is our branding leader, Ami Suki, who's the founder of Zoo Zoo and O Media Lab and several other entities that are global.
We've had to come up with a name for the collection, and that's something that we've just recently come upon.
At last, all of this is happening. At last, there is a way for digital artists to be able to be paid for their work. It's been a long time coming. And so the program is called At Last.
When we saw these disasters unfold, we realized, we need to find out more about how to avoid these pitfalls and find somebody that could guide us. And Courtney came across Jesse.
I had known Jesse for a very long time in totally different circles.
I'm sitting in my office. Courtney reaches out to me
And I just texted him.
and says, hey, I know you're interested in this NFT, blockchain stuff.
Have you ever collected NFTs, or would you consider it?
I'm working on a project.
And he goes, oh, that's funny because it just bought me a car.
And so I asked her some questions around, what blockchain are you going to use? What's the marketing plan? How are you planning on getting these artists introduced to the community and so forth? But it really is needed to start with, where are you going to do this and in what blockchain?
And I was like, oh, okay, can I come by and see you tomorrow? So as we were building the collection, I started thinking about, we have such strong artists that I know are very well respected. And I felt like though we weren't leaning enough in highlighting the artists who had spearheaded the digital realm. And like, here we are releasing this digital collection, we really needed to like lean into those artists.
Hi, my name is Kate Lamas. I'm a 3D digital artist, and I created Magical Digitalism, and my life's work is about death. Courtney saw my artwork a year ago at Underground.
I'm completely attracted to it. I don't doubt at all that it's kind of like widespread at this point.
And she fell in love with my blood diamond pieces.
She is established here in the United States, also in Asia. She currently has 6 billboards in China.
Primarily, computer art is very sci-fi, very cyberpunk, but I feel like now we're moving away from that, and I think that's really fascinating. And as humans, you know, we tend to go with what's familiar, even in realms that aren't as familiar. So I feel like we're taking a step back and looking at nature and wanting to have that again. Everything's becoming so artificial now. And I feel like we crave, because we are organic life forms, crave a certain type of naturalism. So magical digitalism is the genre that I came up with that illustrates nature and technology and brings them both together. And it makes this explosion of a really cool virtual world. I really want, this might sound crazy, but I really want to like help pioneer the death industry and the digital industry and merge them. I think it's just important that death is represented in an artistic way, and I like to use all the colors that I use because I feel like you can express so much more with colors and like draw more attention to a scene. And I've always loved neons, and maybe that comes from me like growing up and like, you know, like being a teenager in Y2K, and I've always loved like hyper neon, like crazy stuff like that. Like having my work about the afterlife, and for years being like interested in the concept of technology with death and with the death industry, I definitely think that people will start to come around a little bit. And, you know, with the metaverse stuff, like we have life in the metaverse, like why don't we have death in the metaverse? I mean, that's something to think about.
Sometimes the NFT space is not friendly. And there's a lot that can also go wrong.
Forsage allowed millions of retail investors to enter into transactions through smart contracts, but under the hood, the SEC says that investors were only earning profits by recruiting others into the operation.
And one of the things that can go wrong is that you choose the wrong chain to mint on. And there's a bunch of them. And they also can allow smart contracts. They're viable, but there's not collectors on them for art. You know, you basically like minted it in like the wilderness, right? And like you've opened a gallery in the middle of the woods. That's a doom and gloom scenario, right? So like that's a fundamental question that you've got to answer is, what chain am I going to mint this on? Is that the right chain for this project?
And this is one of the reasons why Courtney reached out to Jesse for help.
And so I think that the instinct had been, Probably Ethereum.
And I told him a couple of them, and he was like, absolutely not.
And I told her, hold up a second. There's another option you might want to explore.
You need to think about Tezos.
So I learned about Tezos by accident. So I learned by going onto an NFT platform. This artist, digital artist, I forget his name, but he worked with lasers, creating videos with lasers. And he was using Tezos as his currency. And I investigated it from there. And I realized that this platform was created to really be an asset to artists.
And that's where she said, well, what's that? And I said, there's the blockchain called Tezos. And it is really where art lives on the blockchain.
And it was focused on that and not this, let's just run and gun and make a bunch of money really quick. It was something that felt like it was accessible for artists to create this exchange with collectors. And I was really into that.
This is really where the artists live. And the legitimate artists are minting their work. And this is where the community that actually supports and embraces that art.
So that's whenever we started really refining. I mean, it was based on the financial markets. It was based on the royalties being pulled. It was based on the reputations that artists had expressed that each blockchain had.
Once I started collecting on Tezos and really got into that ecosystem, that's when it became less about being a speculator and in it for the money, and more about a love of art and collecting art and supporting artists.
An artist that I've worked with several times and have been a huge fan of her work is Alex Swavani.
Her work, I resonate with it so deeply because it's very kindred to what I feel inside of me. Like,
I'm creating ancient futuristic things, so I'm drawing from the ancient, creating things that are in context to the present, but also look like they're coming from the future.
Exploring the ancient and the futuristic and bringing it into the now moment.
And since this project is based in a sort of suspended time space, it felt appropriate for her to try to, move that around a little bit.
And as far as like NFTs, I haven't minted yet because I am a traditional sculptor. Like, I sculpt with my hands, so I had to learn the programs. I had to learn ZBrush and Blender and how to scan and stuff like that, and acquire 3D printers to kind of get into the digital realm. And I think the last 6 months I've been focused on developing that language and that skill set to be able to enter it in a comfortable way.
When I saw her toy figurines, I was immediately drawn to it, and I was like, I need to go and see this person's work.
In 2020, with Dash and Courtney, I created a sculpture called Atlantis Rising, and it was in Woodruff Park. And so it's this massive 8-foot Black woman who's rising up out of the ground like she's rising up out of water. And it was inspired by Galactus, and it was inspired by deep sea creatures that are iridescent and have their own internal glow. And so the idea was that there's something underneath the surface with most communities, with most places. And so the power of this being was under the surface the entire time. And I created that being rising up out of the ground, revealing herself and her power.
I've always wanted to see Black women as superheroes, as, futuristic goddesses, whatever you would call it. I've always wanted to see that, and she's doing that, and I understand it.
As an angsty teenager, I really was into cartoons, and I was really into spirituality. So I kind of put those things together. So the aesthetic of my work is this futuristic, cartoon-like type of energy. I'm very character-based, but it's coming from this place of the ancient spiritual context, this ancient spiritual symbology that existed when I was coming up, that I was exploring and investigating. I'm a self-taught sculptor. When I was 9 years old, I got my first computer. I got an hour of internet on an AOL disk for free somewhere. And I found, sculptures that were in the language of toys, and that's how I started my journey. So Sam Flores, Upper Playground, Cause, Frank Kozik, Dunny, Money, Kid Robot, all of that stuff. is what was like, okay, there's an alternative to just the toys that are at the store. I can make something or experience something that's alternative. Childhood is important because that is where you learn how to exist in the world. That's where you learn your place. And so creating work in the language of toys allows me to kind of rewrite the future because I'm starting with the child and how the mind works. So when I'm making work that is taking a Black woman and putting her in a powerful position, or I'm taking work that is inspired by African spirituality, I'm rewiring myself and like rewiring the future by starting with the mindset or the imagery that is akin to a child, so that a new future is possible.
So why does anybody collect art? That is a very loaded and philosophical question.
I think you collect things because you love it, and collecting art is important, and curating our homes is important because objects carry the weight of the souls of the artists and the creators.
The simple answer is a lot of people collect art because they believe it is an investment vehicle.
Some people purchase things for investment value, and some people purchase things because they love it and enjoy it and want it around their sphere.
It's a difficult world, it's a difficult business, of course.
Art collecting is risky, art curating is risky, everything is risky, but instead of focusing on the risk, focus on what's right, and yeah, it's not a science.
We had our eyes set on a particular venue that we've worked in before.
We had this venue. It was two really beautiful, big open floor plan, glass, black floors. I think the light would have reflected beautifully. But like a couple of weeks before the show, maybe a month before the show, very close to the show, I was there with our tech director or event director, and I just had a physical response to it. I'm like, this is not gonna work. There's too many skylights. There's already analog artwork on the walls that we can't remove, we have to cover up. We're gonna have to do so much backtracking to make this space appropriate for these artworks that I don't think that it's going to do everything justice. And I called Andrew and I was like, hi, I have this other venue that I think that we should move to.
That was something we didn't sign up. Well, I certainly didn't think of at the beginning, and certainly didn't sign up for.
It's on the Beltline. There is no valet. There's really no parking, and it's rough around the edges. But I think that conceptually, it's really tight.
But it became a necessity for this project.
So all of the artists in the collection have gone through conceptual conversations. Everybody has really wonderful philosophies and in their direction.
So through Courtney, finding those people in Atlanta that are really comfortable in this space and pairing them up with the artists and showing them that it can be done.
Right now, they're working with tech advisement, where they're having one-on-ones.
So Chris and I are collaborating to translate some of my work into an NFT.
And then you and I talked a bit about, we don't want just a static image.
Right. Again, experience, right? Like not just a digital file, but like how do we make this something that challenges the medium, that expands the medium?
It's having conversations about how to get inside of the paintings and how to make them light emitting instead of light absorbing, and scientific application to incredibly beautiful color palette and concept. So I think that collaboration is really exciting.
The degree of collaboration is on a completely different level versus just pulling together a traditional collection, say, of paintings to exhibit in a gallery.
We're lucky to have a lot of beautiful relationships that are strong, that are companies or organizations or people who produce technology, and some of that has not even been seen yet.
When you're foundering or you don't know how to overcome something, there's so many people you can reach out to, and there's a network, there's a community who wants to help.
So Courtney has tasked me with assisting some of the other artists in the collection who work in more traditional forms and might not be quite as experienced with the digital realms.
Whoa.
Yeah, right. So it came in advising them how to approach this collection and giving them opportunities to use some new technologies that they weren't familiar with before.
Okay. What am I looking for?
Maybe they're still over here. Let's
Keyboard.
look around. Should be holograms.
I think a great thing about doing a project like this in Atlanta specifically is that going back to that collaborative nature.
So it's been very rewarding, the meetings we've had over the last few weeks. I think we have a really amazing collection coming together, and a lot of these artists are going to be not only pushing their own boundaries, but pushing the boundaries of what's possible within these digital artworks.
So it's a great place to take risks. It's a safer space from that perspective, and I think that's drawing a lot of people to the city as well.
These artists are getting to know what is on the forefront and figuring out with our tech team how they can integrate that into their work.
I wanted to take Signs of Happiness and upload it as an NFT, but then I realized that uploading the interactive 360 content is maybe not so accessible for many people because they don't have technology like headset. So I was thinking, how can I create maybe some relatable imagery that still brings wellness to digital space, that is more accessible? And somehow at the same time, I was introduced to artificial intelligence for creating imagery, and I start working with AI. So I have created a body of work that I named Orchid Dreams, because it's basically a dream for these immersive places of wellness and wonder.
Where we are today, to make this decision of whether to embark on this project with all that I've learned so far, I probably would not.
There are question marks everywhere because everything is new. And I think that we don't know what's going to happen. We have to be okay with that.
But at the time, I was probably quite naive in what it all encompassed. I think you would rationalize yourself out of this project.
Have to just keep trying to figure out, like, can we shape this ball into something that is useful for everyone and is positive? Can we make it outweigh the negatives that come along with it?
We jumped in this with both feet, thinking this was a great idea. And I still think it's a great idea.
And I think that, everybody seems to be okay with the fact that it's not perfect. And I think that's okay.
Now, ask me the same question after we finalize the project, you know, I might be in a state of euphoria and say, hey, let's continue. Or I could be in a state of depression. It's like, what the hell was I thinking?